Yes.
Get ready to take control of your own financial destiny. It's time to build your dream business. Welcome to the Empowered Entrepreneur.
This just got exciting.
With your host, Spider Graham. Your education starts now.
Hello and welcome to the broadcast. This is Spider, and this time around, I want to talk about time management. Now, you might be able to tell right now that there's something a little odd with the audio for this podcast, and the reason behind this is that I'm recording it in my car. And the reason I'm recording it in my car is that, well, I have a lot of downtime right now. I have a lot of time. I need to be in the car, like many of you, either going to sales meetings or traveling to shows or whatever is taking place in my life. I spend way too much time in my car. And the problem with being in my car, frankly, is it doesn't give me an opportunity to do the things I need to do while I'm sitting in the office. But it's always really kind of interesting because I find that I get some of the best ideas while I'm driving. And I want to talk a little bit today about how we can use this time to do a better job on our jobs and also use it as wisely as possible. Now, one of the challenges we all run into is that we always feel like we're way too busy. We always feel like there's not enough time to do everything we need to do. And I've also understood as a parent and also as a teacher, I'm constantly being given these, I'll call them excuses, by my students and by my children that go something along the lines of, well, I didn't have time to do that. I didn't have time to finish my assignment, whatever it is. And my thinking is always, and I don't always say this out loud, but my thinking generally is somewhere along the lines of, well, you had the same 168 hours this week that everybody else had. What actually didn't happen is you didn't use the time wisely. You had the same amount of time, you didn't use it. As professionals, we want to be as efficient as possible. We want to make sure that we're not just wasting an awful lot of time, and as a result, we're not getting the things done that we should be getting done, or the things that we really want to get done. Let's not put the onus on ourselves to make ourselves more pressure by saying, oh, I have all these things I have to do. Why don't we put it into the context of I have all these things I want to do, and the reason I want to do them is that they're going to make my life better in some way. I'm going to make my business more successful. I'm going to make my relationships more effective and successful. Whatever it is, we have to use the time. So if we think about the time that we have in our lives, almost from an investment standpoint, if you have 168 hours to invest every single week of your life, how do you invest it so that you get the best rate of return? So I want to talk a little bit about that today and just hopefully give you some ideas and some methodologies and maybe a few best practices that you can jump into to do a better job with managing your own time so that you can have a more balanced life. And by the way, I want to talk very clearly about this. I'm not saying, hey, why don't you figure out how to squeeze more productivity out of every second of every day? What I am saying is you want to make sure that the time that you spend working is effective. You don't want to just be spinning your wheels and say, well, I just worked an 8-hour day, but I really didn't accomplish anything. You want to say, hey, I got a lot done today, and as a result, I'm giving myself permission to not work tonight, to spend some time with my family or with friends, or to do something I really want to do, and not necessarily be feeling guilty about the fact that I still have a whole bunch of work that needs to get done. So we'll talk a little bit about that. Now, the biggest thing I think I want to bring to your mind is that none of this is magic. Like everything else we do in business, there are strategies that we can use that will really help us to do a better job of managing ourselves. And a lot of times we really need a little extra help managing ourselves. Now, I don't need to tell you folks that the reality sometimes of our lives is that we're not as efficient or as effective as we really would like to be. And sometimes it's a matter of just bad scheduling, bad planning, maybe a little bit of bad luck. And at other times, it's just really not giving ourselves credit for the work that needs to get done or choosing the wrong path. We talk about things like procrastination. Of course, procrastination is something that we all suffer from. And it's one of those things that some people do a better job at than others. The reality of procrastination, of course, is that it's about self-management. We get to choose whether we do what we want to do, or frankly, with procrastination a lot of the time, we end up doing things we don't want to do because it gives us an opportunity to tune into what we need to do and say, hey, I absolutely need to do this, or I absolutely want to do this. And now if I get it out of my way today, I don't have to think about it anymore. And by the way, that's the best motivator for me personally. If I get something done and off my to-do list, I feel fantastic about it because now I don't have to think about it anymore. And if it's on my to-do list for too long and I keep pushing it to the next day and saying, okay, well, I'll work on this later or I'll do this next week, it just hangs over my head. Get it done? It's gone. Yes, sometimes something else comes and takes its place, but a lot of times it gives you a bit of a reprieve, makes you feel like you've done something, and that makes you feel good. So here are a couple things, first of all, I want to kind of tune you into at least some of the best practices that I've discovered that I find really help me. The first thing is know what it is that you need to do. You should have a to-do list that you can consult several times a day. Now, I do this every single morning when I wake up. One of the first things that I do is I sit down and I put together my to-do list for the day. Now, some people do this at night, the night before, and that's fine. It depends entirely upon who you are and how you approach this. But when I sit down and kind of plan my day, I put a lot of things out there. Now, I'll put a lot of things on a to-do list that, frankly, are quick tasks. Okay, let's pick up the dry cleaning. Why don't you remember to do the dishes sometime this week? That kind of thing. And then you find yourself going down through your list. But it's very important to also recognize that not everything on your list is weighted the same. As a matter of fact, there are a bunch of things on your list that are kind of priorities. They're the things you really need to get done or you really want to get done because doing them will lead to some good conclusion. It will help lead to a goal that you've set, that kind of thing. So it's not just a matter of starting at the top of the list and working your way down. What you really need to be able to do is look at your list every day after you've written down all these things that you want to accomplish and start to prioritize them. Now, a lot of ways what I'll do is I'll just go down through them and I'll say, okay, well, this is easy, this is simple, I can do this during lunch, and kind of figure out the best time to fit it into my schedule. But at other things, I'll look at them and I'll say, okay, this is a big task, and this is a task that may be broken down over several days. Or this is a task that absolutely positively needs to be done today because I promised the client I would have it for them today. Or I'm going to have to get this done first because if I don't do this first, I can't do the other things I need to do. And so I'll go down through my list and I'll say, okay, what's the number one thing I need to get done by end of work today? And I will put a 1 next to it and circle it. And then I'll say, okay, that's the one thing I need to focus on. What's the second thing? And I will go down through there and I will say, okay, the second thing is less priority but still important. So I'll find that here, number 2. Number 3, I try to identify 5 to 6 things every day off my to-do list that I absolutely want to get accomplished. Now, there are things that are going to be on my to-do list that are going to be minimal things, and they may take just a moment, call someone back for a moment, send a quick email. And a lot of times I may group those together and say, okay, I'm going to give myself a half an hour just to get through some of the little things, get them off my to-do list, get a sense of accomplishment, but an opportunity to really just make them go away. But the priority items are the ones that I need to focus on first and foremost. The other things really don't matter. They're not going to affect my business. They're not going to affect my overall goals. They're just things I want to get accomplished. Do the things you need to do before the things you want to do is pretty much what I want to say here. Now, here's something else I'm going to throw into the mix because I think this is incredibly important. Give yourself permission to switch gears after a while of working on any particular project. So, for example, you wake up in the morning and say, okay, I got a big thing. I got to get this proposal out the door. And you give yourself permission to work on it, obviously, and you might give a sense of how long you think it's going to take. Well, I'm a perpetual optimist when it comes to timing out projects, and I often find that what ends up happening is that what I thought is going to take 3 hours takes 7 hours, and I kind of find myself spending the entire day doing something so I get it done right. But oftentimes you also find after a few hours, 3 hours working on something, you get a little burnt out on it, maybe a little bored even. And now it's an opportunity to say, okay, you know what, I'm going to put this on a back burner for a while. I have something else on my to-do list that I want to get done, and I'm going to go to work on that. And I'm going to work on that. Maybe I can get that done faster, get a sense of accomplishment, come back and work on the first project. But I find that changing gears sometimes allows you to kind of take a fresh look at things. It allows you to get it outside of yourself, use a different part of your brain, and really accomplish an awful lot more. I have found personally that if I sit there and plug away at this one thing, especially if it starts becoming difficult or I start losing focus, it becomes more challenging for me. If I leave it for a while and then come back to it, I can approach it with a fresh brain, and I can also start to feel a lot better about the entire process, and I get a lot more done as a result of it. So that's one of the things. Give yourself a little bit of time to break your pace, go back and forth between different projects. The other thing I would say is take advantage of your dead time. Now, as I mentioned, I get to spend, whether I like it or not, a fair amount of time in the car. I try to use this time as productively as possible. Oftentimes I will listen to books, a lot of business and marketing books, things I find very interesting, so I feel like I'm using the time better. Sometimes I'll use it just to wander through my thoughts. I can drive for hours and feel pretty good about the fact that I have things going on in my head, sort things out, etc. I also have the tendency to like to talk to myself when I'm in the car, but not necessarily, but to record my thoughts. Like I said before, sometimes I'm really productive in the car because I have nothing else I have to be doing other than staring out the windshield. And I find that I will look at what's going on and I will think about the projects on my desk, and I will think, hey, by the way, what a fantastic idea. I could approach it this way. Well, what I've taken to doing, and by the way, this is entirely up to you as well, but I love to be able to do dictation while I'm driving in my car. Now, I have an application for my smartphone, which is really simple to use. There are a whole bunch out there. This is a freebie. And it just allows me to punch a button and just dump what's in my head out. Oftentimes, I never even listen to what I dictated, but just by speaking it, ends up kind of fermenting it in my mind a little bit, making it a little bit more meaningful, and gives me some additional ideas. So sometimes just talking about it is the best way to get the information out of my head. Of course, having a recording that you can get back to the office and listen to and say, oh, yeah, that's what I was talking about, and making some notes is incredibly invaluable as well. The other thing, of course, is just make sure that not only driving, but there's all sorts of dead time, whether you're commuting on a train or you have some time in a cab or you have to, wait for a bus or you're doing something else that requires just sitting around and pretty much killing time. Instead of reaching for Angry Birds or Candy Crush, you have an opportunity to be able to say, hey, I need to get a letter off to so-and-so. I don't have to send it right now, but let me draft it. Let me just use my smartphone or a piece of paper and a pencil. Let's go old school on this, huh? And now I can go in there and I can just say, hey, let's make some notes here. Let's write this stuff down. So then when I come back to it later, I've already gotten something started, and I'm going to find it a lot easier to pick this job up and complete it. The other thing I will recommend that you do as part of time management during any regular day is start ignoring your email for a few hours. Give yourself a permission every single day to not answer your email. Turn it off. Don't answer your texts. And by the way, those friends who always want to pump something up on Facebook for you to take a peek at, ignore it. You know what? Give yourself a couple hours away from the distractions. You're going to find that, first of all, it's not going to change your life in any horribly dramatic way. People will get in touch with you and you'll get back in touch with them and it all works out really well. But if you're constantly interrupting yourself to take care of other things and things that really don't need your number one priority of attention, then you're going to always be falling behind. So if you have a priority list of things you want to accomplish, turn everything else off for a while. Give yourself permission to focus on those things. Yeah, you know what? During a lunch break, you can say, hey, let me catch up with my email. Let me see what stupid cat videos have been posted to my Facebook page since I went black, whatever. But you want to give yourself some time to get away from all that. Another thing, and I'm going to be very, very serious about this, is that this is more of a lifestyle change. But one of the things that I've discovered personally in my life is that the distractions are not always the new media things that are in our way. Sometimes we get some old school stuff. Do you realize the average household still statistically has the television on an average of 7 hours every day? That's just a phenomenal stat to me because, first of all, it makes me kind of sad because I think about all the things that are going on that you could be doing with that extra 7 hours every day. What kinds of amazing things could you be doing? And by the way, it's not just televisions, but gaming consoles and other things that just really become a time sink. Now, I'm not saying don't watch television. I'm not saying you can't have some fun, go to a movie, be with friends, play a game. I'm saying if that's all you do, you have a problem. Now, I have a young teenage son. He's a great guy, and he's always into extracurricular activities, and I love that about him. But one of the things is that being a teenage boy just makes him want to go and play video games all the time, I swear. So I sat him down and said, okay, in all honesty, how long do you think you spend playing video games every day on average? And he said, about 3 hours. I say, okay, so that's 3 hours. Now let's look at a typical week. If we assume that you're playing video games roughly every day for 3 hours, 7 days a week, well, that's 21 hours a week. Now, if we take that and multiply it by 4 to get the average month, we're looking at 84 hours per month. Okay, that's kind of a big chunk of change, right? That's like 2 weeks worth of work right there. I said, okay, now let's break it down over a year. If we go to 10 months, that's 840 hours. Let's add a little extra bit there, right? We got another 84. It's roughly, at the end of it, 1,000 hours a year spent playing video games. Once again, I'm not saying there's anything wrong with having some entertainment in your life, but I am saying, what could you be doing with 1,000 extra hours a year to make your life better, to make yourself more successful, and to make yourself more productive? And he understands the point, and my point overall is that you don't have to not watch television. You don't have to not play video games to be successful and be effective, but you do have to monitor it. You do have to be willing to say, hey, I can do this once in a while. I don't have to play for 3 hours a day, maybe an hour a day. Maybe that's my permission to myself, as I give myself an hour at the end of every day to chill out, relax a little bit, unwind, watch something on television, play a video game, do something else. But I also can control how much I watch and use that extra time to do things that are more fulfilling to me personally. Now, the problem, of course, with things like television isn't that we're entertaining ourselves 7 hours a day. A lot of people are watching television or playing games by default. They have no idea what else to do. What do you want to do? I don't know. Let's watch television. It's that kind of thing. So we want to get away from that. We want to change our lives. Now, personally, I don't even own a television anymore. I know it's a little strange, years and years of having a television. I don't have one anymore. I got rid of it. And the reason I got rid of it is I really wasn't watching it as it was, because I kind of tuned myself out from a lot of that stuff. Now, I'm not saying I don't watch television programs, because we're now in an age where using my iPad, I can go on to Amazon Prime, I can go on to Hulu, I can go on to Netflix, and I can download shows that I want to watch. This allows me to really do a good job of handpicking programs that either friends have recommended or I know a little bit about and think I'm going to be interested in. I don't mind watching a show once in a while. And it's also nice sometimes when you're traveling and you find yourself in a hotel room saying, hey, I have some shows that I can watch here. This is fantastic. But to sit down on the sofa and flip it on and just watch whatever happens to be there is really unfocused, and it's a big waste of your time. Anyway, I don't want to make a big lecture out of this, but I encourage you to reconsider how you use your downtime and to think about ways of improving your habits and not just going for the default, and instead going for things that entertain you, turn it off when you're done, and then move on to something a little bit more productive. And finally, and I think this is incredibly, incredibly important, is don't become a type A grind. You don't want to be the guy or the woman who spends 24/7 thinking about work and working. Guess what? It's true. It will make you an incredibly dull person. You're going to a party and someone says to you, so what have you been up to? And all your answer is working. I've just been working. That's all I do. You become kind of uninteresting. So here's what you do, is you give yourself solid permission to take time off. If you've done everything else that you need to do and you've gone through your week and you say, hey, every single day I sat down, I created a meaningful to-do list, I prioritized my to-do list, I turned off all the distractions, I went and got my work done, guess what? It's nighttime. I'm going out with some friends. I'm going to go have dinner. I'm going to go to a movie with my kids. I'm going to have something that is part of my life, not just work. And now we find ourselves in a situation, by the way, and I don't know if you're like me. Sometimes I hope you're not, because I have the tendency to be a little intense when it comes to scheduling my life. But I've also learned from experience that you can work 100 hours a week. You can do it. It is possible. It's miserable. Don't do it. But you can. It doesn't make you a better person. And frankly, you don't really get a lot more work done. I find it's very, very challenging for me personally to be effective after a certain number of hours of working. If you can brag and say, yeah, I put in a 16-hour workday yesterday. But my question to you is, okay, how would you compare your productivity and effectiveness during the first 8 hours versus the second 8 hours? But the point is if you give yourself permission, you feel good about yourself. You say, I got this stuff done. I'm allowed to have time off. You don't have to work 24/7 to be effective. And the final thing that I want to share with you is that sometimes it's really hard to get your day started. Now, one of the things I discovered in my own past is that I am easily influenced emotionally by other things that are going on in my life and in the world. And I had a job. I got up every single morning and I stepped into the shower and I had one of those really cool shower radios, nice and waterproof. And I used to listen to the morning news. And I would step in the shower every single morning, ready to take on the world. And I would step out 10 minutes later, totally defeated, because all I was listening to was gloom and doom, bad things, people treating each other poorly. And it really kind of messed with my mood. And I actually realized at some point, wait, you don't need to do this. There's no law that says you need to get up every morning and listen to the news in order to be an effective or responsible adult. So I stopped it, because I also started to say, this really isn't news I can use. Well, now what I try to do, and not every morning, it depends on what my schedule is, and sometimes I wake up in a great mood and ready to hit the road, but there are times that I need a little bit of inspiration. So what I encourage you to do is give yourself some time in the morning. Hey, maybe you only need 10 minutes, maybe a half an hour, but to get something inspirational behind you. Now, inspiration can come from a number of places. It could be some sort of religious text that you like to read, something that makes you feel a little bit closer to your maker, whatever it is that you believe in. Other people, I find sometimes reading business articles about success stories makes me feel good, makes me want to go out and accomplish some amazing things. Sometimes it's just really finding a writer or somebody who can inspire you, somebody who can share a good story with you and make you feel good about yourself, your productivity, your place in the world, whatever it is. What I'm saying is that sometimes if you take the extra time to put yourself in the right mind, you're going to have a much better day. You're going to be more productive and you're going to be better focused. And that's really what we want to approach here. So that's a little bit of what I want to share with you on time management. Now, there are a whole bunch of different things. And of course, if you become a subscriber, all sorts of different things that are happening in the podcast, all sorts of things that I hope to share with you about my experiences in business and innovation and development and productivity, and hopefully help you find your way and do a better job and make you a happier and more productive and more effective person. So, by the way, please feel free to join us at any time. Spidergram.com. Really happy to have you join us. Join the conversation we're having. Our subscribers are not only listening to what I have to share and what my colleagues have to share, but they're sharing with one another. It's a fantastic community, and it's a place where we can really learn from one another and really work together to create not only a better world for ourselves and our families and our children, but also for future generations to come. So anyway, thanks so much for joining me today. And you know what? No matter where you are or what you're doing, give yourself permission to smile, enjoy yourself, enjoy the journey. It's a fantastic world we live in, and you're part of what makes it so good. Peace.
For more free resources and advice for entrepreneurs, visit spidergram.com and become a subscriber today.